What if the darkest secrets of your family were hidden from you for years? Imagine growing up thinking everything was perfect only to discover one day that the people you loved most had been carrying a burden you never knew existed. What happens when the truth finally comes to light, and you're forced to face the things you never wanted to know? Hi, my name is Ruth. I'm 62 years old, and I've spent my whole life as a mother, a grandmother, and a caretaker. For as long as I can remember, my family was everything to me. I devoted my heart and soul to raising my children, guiding them through the ups and downs of life, hoping that one day I'd be able to watch them carry on the legacy of love and care that I had always tried to build. But as the years went by, things started to unravel, and I didn't even know it. Not until the day my son Michael walked back into my life. Ruth starts her story as a woman who believed she had everything under control. She was the heart of the family, the one who made sure everything was in its place, that everyone was happy, and that no one went without. But something had been off for years, and she never saw it coming. Ruth's family, especially her son Michael, was everything to her. She had always been proud of him, his quick wit, his kindness, the way he was always ready to help others. But one day, without a word of explanation, Michael disappeared. The family struggled to understand why. Ruth, in particular, couldn't find closure. She spent countless nights wondering what had happened, questioning herself. Was it something I did? Did I fail him in some way? For years, Ruth kept her pain hidden, convinced that one day Michael would come back, that he would return to her arms like nothing had ever changed. But the years went by, and she learned to fill the silence with memories of happier times, hoping that maybe he was out there somewhere, trying to find his way back. Then, just as Ruth was starting to accept the absence of her son, a knock on the door shattered the stillness of her life. Standing there, looking both familiar and foreign, was Michael. He looked older, his face lined with experiences she couldn't quite place. His eyes were different, distant, full of something she couldn't understand. Ruth's heart skipped a beat as she stared at him. She wanted to run to him, to hold him, to tell him everything would be okay. But a part of her recoiled. Who was this stranger who once called her mom? Developed the situation. Ruth stood frozen in the doorway, unsure of what to do. "Michael, is it really you?" she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and hope. He nodded slowly, almost cautiously, as if unsure how to proceed. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Ruth invited him in, but the room felt cold, like an unfamiliar place. The warmth that should have surrounded a mother and her son after years of separation was replaced by a heavy silence. She could feel the weight of years of absence between them, like an invisible wall that no words could break. She watched him closely as he sat down on the couch, his hands clenched in his lap. This wasn't the boy she remembered. Michael had always been full of life, full of joy. But now, there was a sadness in him that Ruth couldn't place. They sat together in silence for a while, Ruth unsure of how to bridge the gap that had been growing between them for so long. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, a mix of excitement and anxiety. The pain of the years apart was suffocating, but the longing for answers, for closure, was even stronger. "So," Ruth finally broke the silence, her voice soft, "why did you leave? Why didn't you tell me where you were going? Why didn't you call?" Michael avoided her gaze. I couldn't," he said quietly, his voice shaking. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought you'd be better off without me." Ruth felt a stab in her chest, a sharp ache that almost made her gasp for air. Her mind raced with questions, but she could barely speak. Protecting us? From what? The words he spoke were so vague, so distant, but Ruth could hear the pain in his voice. She could see it in his eyes, the same eyes she had raised him with, now clouded with regret and something else. Something far darker than she could understand. As the conversation continued, Ruth learned bits and pieces of what had happened to her son during the years he had been gone. He spoke of struggles, of hardships, of things he had experienced that he could barely put into words. But what stood out to Ruth was his insistence that it had never been about her or their family. She kept wondering, what was so bad that you couldn't share it with us? Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth? The pain was unbearable. She had raised him to be strong, to face life head-on. Yet here he was, broken and unable to explain what had torn him apart. The longing she had felt for so many years now turned into a cocktail of anger, confusion, and fear. She had hoped that one day he would return to her, but not like this. Not with so much left unsaid. As the hours passed, Ruth's heart grew heavier with each new revelation. She wasn't sure what to do with all the information he had given her. She had been waiting for her son's return for years. But what if the son who came back was not the same boy she had raised? What if there were too many pieces missing from their puzzle? Too many cracks in their relationship to ever truly fix? Ruth knew one thing for sure. The pain was far from over. And as much as she wanted to embrace him and pretend like everything could go back to normal, she knew deep inside that the journey ahead would be filled with even more hurt than she had ever imagined. Days pass, but Ruth's mind can't seem to settle. Every time she closes her eyes, she's haunted by the image of Michael, the son she once knew, now a man burdened with untold stories. The house, once full of laughter and warmth, now feels like an empty shell, echoing with the weight of unresolved emotions. Every word Michael spoke left Ruth with more questions than answers, and every glance he gave her only deepened the emotional chasm between them. As the days stretch into weeks, Ruth can't shake the feeling that Michael isn't entirely present. He's physically here, sitting across from her at the dinner table, joining in on family gatherings, but his heart seems to be somewhere else. She sees it in the way his eyes flicker with hesitation, the way his hands shake when they touch something familiar, like the family photo album or his childhood toys. He no longer looks at her with the comfort of a son who once ran into her arms after a long day now. There is a distance, a gap between them that no amount of time can close. Ruth tries to get him to open up, to talk about the past, about the years he spent away. But every time she presses, he pulls away. "I'm not ready, Mom," he says, his voice rough with emotion. His words are like a door that's barely cracked open, but refuses to swing wide. And every time he says this, it feels like a rejection not just of the past, but of everything Ruth has ever hoped for. Her son is here, but he's not really here. During one quiet evening, Ruth finds herself watching Michael as he stands by the window, staring out at the empty yard. She notices the way his shoulders slump, the sadness that hangs over him like a cloud. It's in these quiet moments that Ruth begins to understand. Michael is not the same person who left all those years ago. He's a man haunted by something so heavy that even his return can't lift it. Dialogue and inner thoughts. "Michael," Ruth calls softly, standing in the doorway of the living room, her voice trembling as she tries to find the words. "Please, tell me what happened. I need to understand." He turns slowly, his face a mixture of guilt and pain. "I don't know where to start, Mom," he says, almost apologetically, his hands running through his hair. "I was lost. I thought I could figure it out on my own. But I couldn't. I still can't." Ruth's heart breaks at the sight of him. This was her son, the boy she raised with so much love, so many dreams for the future. Now, he's a shadow of the person he used to be, consumed by a silent pain that Ruth can't reach. She wants to help him, wants to take away whatever it is that's weighing him down. But the words she needs to say those questions that could bring them closer are stuck in her throat, blocked by years of silence. "Michael, please," Ruth whispers, her voice cracking. "I spent years wondering what went wrong. I never gave up on you. I just need to know why you left, why you never came back." Michael looks at her, and for the briefest moment, his eyes soften. But then the mask returns. "It wasn't about you, Mom. It was never about you. I thought leaving was the only way I could fix things. I thought I was protecting you from the things I was going through." Ruth stares at him, confused. "Protecting me? From what?" Michael looks away, his face a mask of regret. "There are things that I did. Things that happened that I can't explain. I wasn't the person you thought I was, and I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to drag you into my mess." The words hang in the air like a thick fog. Ruth wants to believe him. She wants to understand that he did what he thought was right. But her heart aches, and the silence between them deepens. What could he possibly have gone through that would make him think leaving was the answer? Her mind races, trying to piece together the puzzle. She recalls the boy Michael once was, the one who always made her laugh, who called her Mom with such warmth and affection. She remembers how he used to curl up next to her after a hard day, seeking comfort in her arms. Now, he is a stranger, someone she's trying desperately to connect with, but who keeps pulling away, as if guarding a part of himself that Ruth can't reach. The tension builds. As the days pass, Ruth becomes increasingly frustrated. She watches Michael retreat into himself, his responses to her attempts at conversation growing shorter, more distant. They've had moments where he almost opens up where the walls seem like they might crack, but every time he backs away. And it's always the same excuse. "I'm not ready yet." But Ruth knows that the longer Michael hides behind these walls, the harder it will be to tear them down. It's as if the more he withholds, the more Ruth feels like she's losing him all over again. The space between them feels wider each day, and Ruth can't help but wonder if it's already too late. She wonders, how much longer can I wait for him to come back to me? In a conflict, Ruth struggles with her own emotions. On the one hand, she wants to hold on to the hope that everything can be fixed, that Michael can somehow return to the loving son she once knew. But on the other hand, there's a part of her that feels betrayed, that wonders if he'll ever be the same person again. As she lies awake at night, Ruth's thoughts spiral. Is this really my son? She wonders, what happened to him that made him think he couldn't come to me? I've always been here. I've always been his mother. So why is it so hard for him to let me in? Ruth feels the sting of rejection every time Michael withdraws. It's as if he's trying to protect her from something that she's not even sure exists. But she can't stop wondering, what is he hiding from me? The emotional distance grows as the days pass, and Ruth becomes more desperate for answers. She doesn't know how much longer she can keep pretending that everything is fine, that their family will ever be whole again. It has been several weeks since Michael's return, and Ruth can feel the walls between them growing higher with every passing day. The house is quieter now, filled with the tension that neither of them knows how to break. The small moments of connection, the quiet attempts at normalcy, have faded into long silences and half-hearted conversations. Ruth, desperate to understand, has reached a point where she can no longer ignore the feeling that something monumental is still being held back from her. One evening, Ruth can't stand it anymore. After dinner, she finds Michael sitting alone in the living room, his fingers tracing the edges of a photograph on the coffee table. The same picture of their family from years ago. The sight of it brings a wave of nostalgia and pain crashing over her. The family she once knew, the family she hoped would reunite, is slipping through her fingers. "Michael," Ruth says, her voice soft but firm, "I need to know the truth. Everything. You've been back for weeks, but I feel like I'm still waiting for you to come back to me. To come back to us. What happened, Michael? Why did you leave? Why didn't you ever come back?" Michael stiffens at her words. His eyes, which had once been full of warmth, are now clouded with regret. He sighs heavily, as though he's been carrying the weight of his secrets for far too long. He leans back in the chair, his hands trembling as he looks down at the floor, seemingly searching for the words. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mom. I thought I was protecting you, but I didn't know how to handle what was happening inside me. I was lost. I was trying to find myself, but instead, I found darkness. I didn't know how to come back from that. And every time I thought about returning, the shame held me back. The guilt of abandoning you all... It suffocated me." Ruth's breath catches in her throat. For the first time, Michael's words don't feel like just excuses. They feel like a confession, like a plea for redemption. "I thought if I stayed away," Michael continues, "I could save you from the person I was becoming. But all I've done is break everything that mattered. I couldn't face you, not after what I did." Ruth's heart breaks as she listens to him. The boy she raised her son was not just hiding from her, but from himself. The pain he had, carried all these years, had been so deep, so unbearable that he couldn't find a way to come home. "Michael," Ruth says softly, walking closer, her voice full of a tenderness she hasn't felt in weeks. "You don't have to carry this alone. We could have worked through it. You could have come home. We could have helped you." Michael finally looks up at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know. I should have come to you. But I was so afraid. Afraid that I wasn't the person you thought I was. Afraid that I'd disappoint you again. And the guilt, Mom, it's been eating me alive. Every day I wondered if I'd ever be good enough to come back." Ruth's heart swells with a mix of sorrow and understanding. She can see the brokenness in her son, the years of self-imposed isolation and emotional turmoil. And despite the years of hurt, despite the pain of his absence, she can feel the love she still has for him, undying and unyielding. "I've missed you so much, Michael," she whispers, her voice breaking. "I never stopped loving you. I never stopped waiting for you." The floodgates open then. Michael, unable to hold back anymore, breaks down in his mother's arms. The tears come first in quiet sobs, then in a rush of grief and relief. Ruth holds him tightly, stroking his hair as if he was still the little boy who had once run to her for comfort. The years of silence, the years of unanswered questions begin to fade as she whispers softly, "It's not too late. We'll heal. Together." Cliffhanger or resolution. As the evening draws to a close, Ruth and Michael sit together on the couch. The tension that once filled the room is slowly dissipating, replaced by a quiet sense of peace. There's still so much to work through, so many wounds that need healing. But for the first time in a long time, Ruth feels like she has her son back. He may not be the same person he was before, but that doesn't matter. What matters now is that they are finally speaking the truth. They are finally understanding each other. "I know it's going to take time," Ruth says softly, glancing at Michael. "We can't fix everything in a day, but we can start. We can rebuild what we lost." Michael nods, tears still lingering in his eyes. "I don't expect everything to be perfect, but I promise, Mom, I'll do whatever it takes. I want to be part of this family again. I want to make things right." Ruth smiles, A small, tender smile. We'll take it one day at a time, Michael. But you're home now. And that's all that matters. As the camera slowly zooms out, Ruth and Michael sit together in silence, no longer broken, but beginning to heal. The past may never be fully forgotten, and the scars may remain, but they have found the one thing that can heal even the deepest wounds, each other.